Fine, straight up, you got your ass kicked.
Don't be conservative. Tell me I got my ass kicked.
You
that's
did.
What I want to hear.
42 points.
I'm
Do I need to say anything else?
What happened in this game? I don't think Draymond should have been suspended at all.
Are you out of your damn mind? You are out of your damn mind.
Hey, Josh, can you smell?
Really?
Cooking. Let's go back to SmackDown.
And completely stolen Cody Rhodes' WrestleMania moment. This is total. No, you don't get to talk right now.
Oh, really?
No.
You don't get to talk.
No.
I am projecting. That's what I do in the media. You guys are afraid to put your freaking takes out there. Yes, that's what I'm doing.
You, again, just
you don't know how sports media works. This is my job. I'm back, and Josh is here as well. The gang is back together, and welcome to a special Thanksgiving week edition, episode number 57 of Championship Rings. We got all things NFL, college football rivalry week, and Survivor Series War Games on tap tonight, Josh Ungar.
Yep. That's what I say to Survivor Series. Shrug emoji.
All right, well, we'll talk about that as we get later into the show. Tonight, we are live on YouTube at Championship Rings 216. We are also live on Unger to the Max YouTube channel. We're also live on X at Rings Champion. You can also check us out on Instagram at Rings Champion, Facebook at Rings Champion 216. Now, Josh, I was not here last week as you and guest host Jalen Sandvik talked about the Chiefs losing their first game to the Buffalo Bills. But I got to tell you what, 30-27 to the Carolina Panthers? Should Chiefs fans be concerned?
I think it would have been hilarious if the Chiefs had somehow won last week against Buffalo and then suffered their first loss here in this game against Carolina. But that's not how it played out. But in terms of answering the question, I really don't know, because do you want to doubt Patrick Mahomes come playoff time? You can do that, but we saw what he did last year when everybody was kind of doubting him and counting out the Chiefs. He just went on a rampage and led the Chiefs to a Super Bowl. Nothing out of the ordinary for him at this point. So it's like, I don't know. Because on one hand, yeah, they're not, it doesn't seem like they're firing on all cylinders. But on the other hand, I don't want to bet against Mahomes come playoff time.
So I do think that, part of it is boredom, right? Where it's like we won back-to-back Super Bowl champions. We know we're more than likely, at worst, the way the AFC is played out, going to be a top 2 seed. Obviously, they would want the number 1 seed in the first round bye, but I don't know if Kansas City feels that they absolutely need it. And I think part of it is like, we're playing the Panthers. Like, we know we're so much better than them. We don't have to throw our fastball. And Patrick Mahomes will just drive down at the end of the game and get us in field goal position to win the game. I'm not even that concerned about the Chiefs' defense. I think Steve Spagnuolo, that defense went, 30-something games without giving up, 25 or so points. Then obviously the last 2 weeks they've struggled. I thought, by the way, in a loss, that might have been Bryce Young's best game of his professional career. I went away from that game more impressed with the way Carolina was able to move the ball on Kansas City's defense than anything else. But from the Chiefs' perspective, it's not about Mahomes. It's not about them as a team. It's not about, them bringing over DeAndre Hopkins or Xavier Worthy, maybe not as impactful as we thought, or the fact that Isaiah Pacheco's coming back reportedly this week against the Las Vegas Raiders on Black Friday, which I think will help them. I think the biggest thing, Josh, for this Chiefs team is you take a look at the snaps and you take a look at the production. They did this a little bit last year, and maybe he'll turn it on for the playoffs. But Travis Kelsey just does not seem like the same guy.
And maybe that's because of his girlfriend. I don't know. But I will say this. Like, we were kind of talking about the same things last year, like I said earlier with Kansas City. Like, okay, their offense isn't flashy. They don't have those deep bombs to Tyreek Hill anymore. And yet they still won the Super Bowl last year. And people were saying, "Oh, they're they're gonna have to go on the road because they're not the number one seed." Guess what? They went into Buffalo and beat the Bills. Guess what? They went into Baltimore and beat the Ravens. So why would I doubt the Chiefs or be concerned about them when we've seen them kind of in this position last year?
Yeah, I think the difference is, you look at this team and last year's team. I look at this team more as like, and I'm not going to say they're going to go on a full fledged collapse the way that my Philadelphia Eagles did a year ago, but they started out this year the way my Eagles, in my opinion, started out last year, which is, grind it out, win close games. Everybody's saying, it'd be nice to blow somebody out. You didn't really hear that from Kansas City last year. It was sort of, well, we're dealing with injuries, we're going through growing pains. This year, it's been like, hey, we can't keep playing in close games. Yes, we're surviving it. Now, again, I think the difference this year is they have Patrick Mahomes and they have Andy Reid and they do have Travis Kelsey, and they're getting reportedly Hollywood Brown back, who could be back by Christmas. They're getting back Isaiah Pacheco this week. So reinforcements are coming. But at some point, and we talked about this, listen, they made a great, incredible play against the Denver Broncos to win that game. They have barely survived games this year against the likes of Carolina, of Baltimore, of Cincinnati,
Tampa Bay.
Bay. Like, I do believe that at some point you're playing with fire, and that fire is going to catch up to you.
I mean, we saw that over in college football with the Miami Hurricanes against Georgia Tech. So there's your example right there.
Yeah, I just think, like, we've seen this with the Vikings. Like, remember in 2022 when they went like 11-1 or something crazy like that in one possession games, and then last year they were like 6-6, or like, I always feel like it always regresses back to the mean. So I'm not sitting here saying Kansas City's not going to be the number one seed. I'm not sitting here saying they're not going to go to the Super Bowl, because in my opinion, until you beat them in the playoffs, you absolutely should. What I am saying is, this is either a Chiefs team that is either the best team situationally that we have seen all time, maybe even better than Brady and Belichick in their heyday, which very well could be possible, or it's just a team that, to be honest with you, might be a little bit bored, because they do, even though they have played in these close games against Cincinnati and the Baltimores, they do play up to their competition. And I do feel like a little bit this Carolina game was, well, you know what? It's the Panthers. Like, yeah, the game should have been closer than we thought, but overall, we're better than the Panthers. Like, who cares about the result of this game?
Yeah. I, I'm not going to doubt against the Chiefs. It's Mahomes. Why would I?
So, I do not think that Patrick Mahomes is in the MVP conversation this season, but one guy that might be in the MVP conversation, I know, Josh, you are big on not having a quarterback win the award every year. Well, there may not be an example greater than a guy who I will raise my hand and admit, as an Eagles fan, I did not expect this kind of impact from number 26 out of Penn State, the former New York Giant, who is making Joe Shane eat his lunch back up every single day of the week, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, for deciding to essentially pay Drew Lock the extra $5 million, and he's not even playing anymore, that they could have gave Saquon Barkley, who is now having, in my opinion, and we've had some great running back seasons in my franchise, Brian Westbrook, Shady McCoy. This may be the best running back in Eagles franchise history.
Very well could be. Um, I would say it's either Barkley or Josh Allen at the front of the pack for MVP right now. I would give the slight edge, I think, to Saquon because because of the impact overall on this Eagles offense. But I think what's holding him back is that, like, people are saying if he wants to win MVP, he's got to break Eric Dickerson's 2,000-yard record. He's got to do this. He's got to do that. Like, people are putting all these various roadblocks in the way, whatever it is. And then you flip over to Josh Allen, and I don't hear people putting like roadblocks of any kind in front of his path to MVP. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, and I think to be honest with you, it's mostly because even though they have a running game now in James Cook, I think many people still, and I'm one of those people that do feel like that, it is really a Josh Allen centric reliant offense in Buffalo. I think you're forgetting one name out there, and it's the guy that we just saw have another significant, masterful Monday Night Football performance last night. Baltimore Ravens quarterback number 8, Lamar Jackson, who I think, and again, I was wrong on Saquon Barkley. Obviously, I love him, but I think undisputably number 8 for the Baltimore Ravens is the MVP of this football season. I know what
I
people,
can't say that. Not
I
when
know
you've
what
lost.
people are gonna say.
Not when you've
Oh,
lost to the Raiders. Not when you've lost to the Browns. You lost against the Steelers again. You no, I can't put
okay.
him. I can't put him as
Here is
the
my
MVP.
argument for Lamar Jackson. So this year, he leads the NFL currently in touchdown passes. He has 27 touchdown passes. Do you realize this year, again, I think the MVP is more of a stat award. He has 3 interceptions, and all 3 of those interceptions were on tip balls by his own wide receivers, which means he could be entering week 13 if those 3 passes are caught with 0 interceptions on the season. If he added that, I don't care if he has 4 losses. To me, that is MVP conversation, and that's what I look at. And I look at this Baltimore Ravens team, and I just remember them. And you could say what you want, but I've watched the Ravens with Lamar Jackson the past few seasons, and I've watched the Ravens without Lamar Jackson, whether it's Tyler Huntley, whoever was in a quarterback. Those guys could not move the ball. And so I look at value, and as much value as I think Saquon Barkley has brought to this Eagles offense, that offensive line, to me, I know my good guy Jalen, who filled in last week, is going to tell me he thinks the Lions are the best offensive line in football. I would very much challenge him to say I think the Eagles are the biggest and most powerful offensive line in football that were just knocking the hell out of the Rams. I'm not saying Barkley doesn't make great moves. I'm not saying Barkley's not explosive. But what I am saying is he is running behind a great offensive line with great pieces behind him. Josh Allen has had a couple of bad games this year, to me, more than Lamar, including one where he threw less than 100 yards against Houston, and one on a Sunday night where Baltimore absolutely stomped Buffalo. So that, to me, puts Lamar Jackson ahead of Josh Allen in the MVP conversation.
So I hear what you're saying, but when I look at the overall impact, I would still give the edge to Saquon because of like feel like Saquon has come in and kind of quieted the talk around Nick Sirianni recently. Um, you you see a clear difference in how AJ Brown and Devontae are playing. Um, the defense has kind of stepped up since Saquon has gotten
Kind of stepped up. Do you realize my defense is the number 1 defense in football?
that. But that's my point, though. Um,
But
it,
I don't think that's a Saquon change. I think that's the change of those 2 great defensive backs that we drafted in the draft, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean at the slot. By the way, that's when my defense turned around. Was post by when DeJean was entered into the slot.
I'm not dismissing the impact of Quinyon Mitchell or Cooper DeJean, but if you're running the ball and sustaining these long drives, guess what? Your defense has time to sit on the sidelines, rest, recover, catch
Yes,
catch their
and
breath.
and
So
Jalen
that's
and
why I'm
Jalen Carter and that defensive front has led the way as well. And I get what you're saying. I've also said this. I said this today on Braden's World. We all want to talk about the quarterbacks. We all want to talk about Lamar and Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert and name them. But when you look at what, in my opinion, is the five best undisputed teams in the National Football League, Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City, Detroit, Philadelphia, in no order. All five of them are doing what? They are running the hell, and I mean the hell, out of the football.
I think you forgot a team in there. Lambeau Field, the Green Bay Packers. You forgot them.
I said the five undisputed. I don't think Green Bay is undisputably in there. I don't.
I think they're the third best team in the NFC.
Well, I think Minnesota. I'd put Minnesota right now over them, especially because Minnesota beat them head to head.
I would still put Green Bay ahead of them right now based on the way they're playing.
That's definitely an interesting conversation. We're going to see that game week 17 in Minneapolis, which very well could be for a divisional spot, could be for a 5 seed, could be for a 6 seed. We don't.
I think that game will be flexed into Sunday Night Football rather than Dolphins Browns.
Oh yeah, Dolphins Browns is not. I don't think it's going to be happening on Sunday night. Speaking of which, you alluded to the Dolphins, Josh. So let's get to it. So a couple weeks ago, we had this debate between the Cowboys and the Dolphins, and you had said you thought the Dolphins' playoff odds were still alive. I said they lost at that point 2 close games with Tua coming back. They lost to Arizona at home on a buzzer beater. They lost to Buffalo in Buffalo on essentially a buzzer beating field goal. You said you thought their playoff odds were still alive. I sort of said I didn't know. Well, here they are all of a sudden. They won at the Rams, which I thought was the game that they were going to lose. That was a big win for them in SoFi Stadium on that Monday night. Then they knock off the Raiders and they dispatch the Patriots in Miami.
But which they usually do. So I'm sorry, I'm not that impressed by that.
So this game to me right here is the game. You're in Lambeau. It's going to be cold. It's Thanksgiving night. It's prime time. Are these Dolphins going to be for real? Are they going to compete with the likes of the Chargers and Denver? And, maybe by hook or by crook, Cincinnati, though I'm not counting on it, for that West AFC wildcard spot. Because to me, if they're going to go on a run, this is the game they have to have.
And we all know the reputation that the Dolphins have. When they get into December football, they just fall apart. I don't know what to make of the Miami Dolphins. I really don't. They're one of the most confusing teams in the NFL right now, I would say.
What's interesting? Obviously, he's not the MVP. I'm going to put that out there right now. Obviously, he's not. But if you want to talk about valuable to your team, is there anybody more valuable in football to a football team than Tua is to the Miami Dolphins?
I mean, we saw how much their quarterback play fell off a cliff. They've lost to they did lose that Monday night game to the Titans, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they did. Pretty badly. If I recall, it was like a 10-point game. It wasn't even close in the fourth quarter. Speaking of Tennessee, that was the shock of the weekend. That's not that could be. We'll talk about that in the next segment from our other takeaways from week 12. But my goodness, so you're right. I don't know how to feel about these Dolphins. I feel like they're front runners. Like I said about 3 weeks ago, I kind of feel like they missed their opportunity. Why the hell they did not have Mike White, who to me is a capable backup, still on that roster, and they go with Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle as their backup quarterbacks with a guy who has a history of concussions? I have no idea. I said it at the time when Tua came back. If I was him, I would have not came back, but I totally understand it because football is a weird brotherhood to where in the NFL, it's like if you played, you're considered this almighty person, and anybody who never played football just doesn't understand football according to players. The NFL brotherhood is very tight. We all know that. Um, obviously Tua's turned this Dolphin season around, but the way Denver is playing, which I said today on Brandon's World, Josh, if you did not get a chance to listen, I gave you credit. I think your best call of the year was Denver as a playoff team because I think now that's actually reality and I think it's going to happen. As I sit here right now today, I think we're going to get three AFC West teams in the postseason: Kansas City, Denver, LA. I think Buffalo is obviously winning the East, Houston obviously winning the South. I think Baltimore, Pittsburgh gets in the North. And I just think Miami, as bad as we know San Francisco is playing right now, we know Kyle Shanahan and Mike McDaniel. We saw the way they matched up a couple years ago. This matchup against Green Bay is going to be tough. And I don't care how the Jets and Browns are playing. We just talked about it. That historically, Miami going into those cold environments in December does not do well.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the impact the snow globe had on Pittsburgh in Thursday night, even though Pittsburgh should be used to that. But there you go. So it'll be interesting to see how the whole dome stadium conversation changes after that. But in terms of the Dolphins, if like you said, if they want to have a legitimate chance, they gotta win on Thanksgiving night in Green Bay. And given the way Green Bay's offense is playing right now, I don't see them doing
I wouldn't
that.
even say it's their offense. I would say it's their defense. Was Josh Jacobs been terrific, more so than I thought he would be? I was banging the table all offseason. I did not understand why they swapped out Aaron Jones, having a very good season in Minnesota. For the record, for Josh Jacobs, he's been a better in the receiving game than I think even Green Bay thought he would. Now Jordan Love is getting hot again at the right time, the way he did a year ago. And I'll tell you what's interesting about Green Bay. Their three losses have been two divisional games at home and the game in Brazil. That's it. And they're what, 8-3? And to me, they feel like a 6-5 team that's really 8-3, getting going at the right time. But Xavier McKinney, to me, the weak leader in interceptions, another former New York Giant, by the way, has completely transformed the way that defense played, along with the new defensive coordinator Jeff Halfway, the former head coach at Boston College.
Oh yeah, um, I I I just don't see the Dolphins going into Green Bay and beating the Packers on a short week. Given the way the Packers seem to be firing on all cylinders at the moment, I think this is going to be a short-lived thing for the Dolphins.
So you alluded to it. Before I'm going to let you talk about your other takeaways from Week 12, I want to talk about the snow globe game, as you called it. I called this upset on Thursday. I thought the Browns were going to play their Super Bowl. I thought the Browns were going to walk in there. I thought they were going to beat the Steelers on Thursday night. But my takeaway isn't even about the game itself. My takeaway, and I know I got a lot of hate on this from friends, but watching that game, I know I'm the only person in America that thought about it. I'm watching that game going, no, this is why we need to have a dome in Cleveland, Ohio. Nobody in their right mind, unless you're sitting there drunk or you're sitting on the couch, comfortable by a warm fireplace, drinking hot chocolate, thought watching last night's game was aesthetically pleasing. I guarantee you, if you put the players and the coaches on a lie detector test, they would tell you, no, that was ugly. We do not enjoy that. And listen, the Lions play in the Midwest. They've had a dome for years. They don't really care about snow. This was a once in a 5-year blizzard in Cleveland, Ohio, on a random November night where it went from green grass to snow. Was it entertaining? Was it great? Sure, it was. There reportedly is going to be weather in Buffalo this Sunday. We could have more snow games than we have typically had the past few years, but I'm sorry. I don't want to watch football on that. I believe football is supposed to be made in weather. I don't think football is supposed to be played in weather where there's just snow all over the field and you can't see, especially with playoff games on the line.
It'll be interesting to see how the dome conversation changes following that game. Um, the Steelers are a weird team, kind of like the Dolphins, but the Steelers have firmly put themselves in playoff positioning, as we kind of talked about.
But
But
I'll be honest. Let me ask you this. I'm sorry to interrupt. Do they look like a playoff team to you?
I'll say yes and no, because, like, Russell Wilson seems to be playing well at the quarterback spot for them, better than Justin Fields. And their defense, despite not having Alex Highsmith, is still making plays and stuff. But I'm like, there's just something about the overall offense that has me scratching my head where I'm like, that doesn't look like a playoff caliber offense.
So, okay. You said that you thought Russell Wilson has looked like an upgrade over Justin Fields, and I had my buddy on, Michael Reiner, on Brantford. He's a big Pittsburgh Steelers fan, been a Steelers fan forever. I have up here Russell Wilson's stats. This is his complete regular season this year. By the way, he has two games, the game against the Jets and the game against the Commanders, where he was at or under 50% completion percentage. His best throwing game this year was against the Giants when he had 71% completion percentage, 278 yards, and a touchdown. Josh, this year in 5 games as a starter, he has 1,200 yards, which I mean is okay, pretty average in today's league, but only 7 touchdowns, 2 picks, and a 98.6 QBR rating. It's average quarterback play to me. And to me, the difference is with him and Fields, he's doing a better job on the deep ball down the field, which is giving them more explosive plays. But the offense doesn't work anything different. I mean, they really kicked 6 field goals against Baltimore and won the game. Are you kidding me?
Hey, I'm not saying it was a dramatic upgrade for Pittsburgh to go from Justin Fields to Russell Wilson. But overall, I would say the offense has looked better since Russell Wilson has taken control. But it's like when I watch the skill position group, yeah, I like Jalen Warren, I like Najee Harris, but outside George Pickens, who else do you have at wide receiver that really like scares you? Or
I
you're
would say Mike Williams.
I mean, he made the one catch against the Commanders, which I I don't know what's happening with the Washington Commanders right now.
Well, I'll tell you, it's the Cliff Kingsbury effect. Speaking of which, how about that game? That game was 13-9 with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter and turned into an absolute circus. Both teams tried to give the game away. But, I was listening to some sports talk radio, and I really never bring this up, but it got me thinking because they were talking about the Cliff Kingsbury effect, which is if you look at his offenses every year in Arizona, he would start off hot, September, October, they'd surprise everybody, they put up 30 points a game, and about this time of the year, their offense started slowing down. They started averaging closer to 18 points a game. Quarterback turning the football over. And it's starting to be that trend again in Washington as the Commanders. They have lost now 3 straight games. Their schedule down the stretch pretty easy. I still think they're going to be a playoff team. But I was shocked. Pleasantly, by the way. I wanted Dallas to win. I wanted them to mess up their draft positioning. I wanted Philadelphia to get more space in the division from Washington. At the effort the Cowboys put in because they played that game like it was their Super Bowl.
Yeah. I don't think Jerry Jones knows how to properly tank.
By the way, they're going to beat the Giants on Thursday once the Giants pull magic out of their hat because the Giants quit. Oh, let's be real. How disrespectful was it to put Daniel Jones in at practice squad safety and then cut him the next day? Like the Giants are the new Browns from 1999. They are a joke of a franchise.
They really are. And Brian Dable's probably going to get fired. Joe Shane's probably going to get fired. They'll probably end up with the number one pick, and we'll see if they go with Travis Hunter or Shador Sanders. They're going to go with one of the two Colorado boys, I would think. But
Okay, so I have one more takeaway from week 12. And this is one that you may debate me on a little bit, and I'm open to hearing the conversation. I am. But I don't think many people in the media are talking about this. CJ Stroud is quietly having a sophomore slump.
I can see that. I mean, they ended the game with a safety against the Tennessee Titans.
Of him running in the back of the end zone. That was after, by the way, Kyrie Fairbairn missed a 28-yard field goal that would have tied it. But regardless, I thought the game they played against Dallas was their best complete game all year. I actually thought the first half he played against the Lions was the best half he's played all year. And I get it. Nico Collins went down, and obviously Diggs went down. But this offense, to me, didn't even look the same when Nico and Diggs was in there. And I've told you this over the last couple of weeks, even though we haven't really dove into a lot on Houston. And to me, you saw it this past week because Joe Mixon only had like 22 yards rushing, something like that. This is a Joe Mixon or bust offense.
So, my question to you would be, do you think that this recent offensive slump from Houston is going to take some head coaching opportunities away from Bobby Slovic?
That's a very good question.
Because we've heard his name be linked to it be mentioned in different possible openings that could happen.
So I think to answer that, let's go through the jobs real quick. The Jets job is a complete mess. I don't think Slowick would take that job because I don't know if they know what their direction is at quarterback. Vegas, is that job going to come open? I think it very well could, but is that a Dion Shador job opening that's already locked in? I think Jacksonville at this point, to be honest with you, is Belichick's to lose. If Belichick does not get that job, maybe that's a scenario where he goes there. Maybe you'll look at the Giants. They do fire Dable and they want a complete culture reset.
The Saints.
The Saints are just such a salary cap hell spot. I would not want to take that. I think the one job that's most appeasing to people are two jobs. One of them is Chicago, obviously, with the Caleb Williams situation and the offensive talent you have there. I think Bobby Slowick would be actually a great fit there. The other one, and again, maybe because they won Thursday night, maybe he saved his job. I have no idea what the hell is going to happen.
Jalen and I were talking about this. The Browns have already said they're not firing him.
You know what? I heard that today, and I heard the report about they're bringing back Deshaun Watson, which I don't know how they can. I don't care. Pay him $46 million to keep him at home. You cannot bring him back in that building. But I have heard teams say their coaches have been safe before, and they've also been fired. Look at Doug Peterson in Philadelphia. They said he was safe, and 3 days later, Doug Peterson was no longer employed.
I don't think Kevin Stefanski's going to be out of a job. But in terms of my other takeaways, because I want to get back to that, I told you Seattle was going to be right in the mix again. I told you that.
I see, and I'm still like, are they for real? I don't know who's good in that division. I don't know. They all have fatal flaws.
I mean, San Francisco's not good.
No, they're not. I can tell you one thing. Arizona's good one week and horrible the next week.
Whoever wins that division, they might win a game, but they're not going to make it to past the divisional round, I don't think.
Listen,
Like,
I think Seattle's got as good a shot as anybody, and I got to give you credit, and I got to give Mike McDonald credit because the Seahawks have battled their asses off. After starting 3-0, they beat New England, they beat Miami without Tua, they beat Bo Nix in his first start, and they completely fell off a cliff after that. And then they bounced back. And what do you know? Nick Bosa goes out of the game when it's Seattle and San Francisco, and that 12-yard scamper by Geno Smith to give him the 4-point lead to end that game might have been the catalyst to turn around Seattle's whole season.
yeah. Um, and Leonard Williams had himself a game on Sunday
Yes.
against Arizona.
And that interception by Kyler Murray, I had to watch that back about 3 times and figure out what the bleep he was doing. Oh my! I mean, that was Will Levis. Kyler, you're not Will Levis. What are you doing?
Maybe something happened with Call of Duty.
I don't know. Kyler Murray is one of the weirdest quarterbacks in the league. Some days, Josh, I'm not joking when I say this. There are days where Kyler Murray looks like he could be a top 5 quarterback in the sport. And there are days where Kyler Murray looks like he did on Sunday, where he looks like he showed up after playing 12 hours of Call of Duty.
I don't know. This whole season overall has been very weird. I feel like you can't, outside of like Detroit and Philadelphia, I guess you could say Kansas City because they're 10-1. I would say those 3 teams have kind of separated themselves, but everybody else is just kind of bunched together.
Oh, I would put Buffalo in that conversation with those 3.
You would?
Buffalo was certainly there.
Okay. You mean because Buffalo beat Kansas City?
Not only that, they're 9-2.
Okay, that's fair. So would you agree with me that those 4 teams have kind of separated themselves from the rest of the group?
I think those are the best 4, and I still think Baltimore on any given Sunday could lose and beat every single one of those teams.
Yeah.
Baltimore just depends on what defense you're going to get.
It really does. And I want to put Green Bay in that group. I really do, because I really like Jordan Love. I know I'm higher on him than you are. And I really like the way they're using Josh Jacobs. You mentioned him earlier. How about the resurgence of the running back position overall, though?
So I just alluded it to you a little bit, and I know you're diving into the backs more themselves. Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, different places thriving. But
maybe not so much Joe Mixon right now. But
well, not after last week. But Joe Mixon has had an incredible season for Houston.
I can't disagree with that.
But look at if you want to put Green Bay in there for the sake of argument for this conversation specifically, I'll put Green Bay because they have a running back in Josh Jacobs. Philly, Green Bay, Detroit, Baltimore, Kansas City, Buffalo. They are all using the run game. They all have superstar-ish quarterbacks. They're all using the run game.
Exactly. But what I find interesting, specifically about Green Bay in this case, is they're using Josh Jacobs in the run game, but it feels like they're using Josh Jacobs in more of a hybrid role, because it feels like I would argue he's a bigger threat in the receiving game.
And by the way, going into this year, he never had a receiving touchdown.
And yet here he is. So, but I know we got to get into week 13.
Let's talk week 13, because there are some interesting games. There are a couple games I had to leave on my list, but I'm going from number 5 to number 1. This game at number 5 would have been a little bit higher for me if Arizona would have knocked off Seattle last week, but they did not. I have Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals taking on Sam Darnold and the Minnesota Vikings. Minnesota's a weird team, too, where it's like, I don't know what we're going to get from the Brian Flores-led defense every week. Justin Jefferson had 1 catch for 7 yards against the Bears. I expect him to go off in this game. Usually, when a team plays horrible like that, they bounce back the following week. Arizona's done well on the road this year. This is a sneaky good game, but again, that Arizona loss to Seattle really knocked the taste out of my mouth for this game a little bit. Number 4, we're going to Thanksgiving night. We talked about this earlier. Dolphins, Packers. This is the season for me for the Miami Dolphins to determine if they are a real AFC wildcard contender or not. Number 3, this is a real interesting game for both sides, in my opinion. It is one of the best rivalries in the NFL. Pittsburgh going to Cincinnati to take on the Bengals. For the Steelers, we talked about their schedule here down the stretch. The Steelers could theoretically start the year 8-2 and finish 10-7 with the brutalness of that stretch. And for the Bengals, this is actually their last stand. They have one of the most talented offenses in the NFL. It's undisputed, undeniable. Can they stop anybody? If this defense cannot stop the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, and they're just a terrible defense, I think the Bengals need to prove, they need to show up in a divisional game. They need to win this game to have any shot at that last wildcard spot, because it may come down to that game between them and Denver. I believe it's week 16 later in the season. Number 2, I have the Sunday night game for 2 reasons. Number 1, there's going to be a lot of snow on the ground reportedly. That could change from this time to kick off, but it sounds like it's going to be a blizzard in Buffalo. How is San Francisco going to handle those conditions? Is Brock Purdy going to play? And are the Niners, who were such the Avengers going into this season, is this their final stand? Because I think if they lose to Buffalo, their season's over. Can Buffalo even put a whipping on San Francisco, put them into the ground, and send the Niners, in my opinion, backpacking and going to the bar in January? And I think number 1, without a doubt, is the number 1 game on probably everybody's wish list this week. 425, CBS, Jim Nantz, Tony Romo. In my opinion, the 2 MVP finalists we talked about earlier in the show, Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, that offensive and that defensive line, going into Baltimore, a place where the Eagles have never won in their history. Lamar Jackson has 1 loss in his career in the NFC, and it was in 2020 to Daniel bleeping Jones. Can the Ravens, who got a big win against the Chargers, short week at home, can they beat one of the best teams in the NFC and even the NFL, the Philadelphia Eagles?
Okay. I like your list. I don't disagree too much. For me, at number 5, I've got the LA Chargers going down south to take on the Atlanta Falcons. How do the Chargers respond after a tough loss at home on Monday Night Football against the Baltimore Ravens? The Falcons are leading the division in the NFC South, but I wouldn't say they're like a legit contender, really. But there's just something about that matchup that I find very intriguing. Um, it could be a shootout, but it could also be like a 20-17 type game. I don't know, and that kind of adds to the intrigue of it. At number 4, I agree with you about Cardinals Vikings. I think this game's a little more important for Arizona than it is for Minnesota, because they lost to Seattle last week and they have to play Seattle again in a couple weeks. So are they kind of overlooking the Vikings and looking ahead to that rematch with Seattle? That's my big question with the Arizona Cardinals. At number 3, that's where I have 49ers Bills. It's like you said, I think it's San Francisco's last stand, and I can't wait to watch this game, especially if it is wintry conditions. It's just going to be fun. By the way, I love that even though the Bills are building a new stadium, they're not putting a stinking roof on it. um, they're never going to host a Super Bowl and they just don't care. So I like that. And then I agree with you at number one. That's easy. Eagles Ravens. But at number two, I'm actually gonna go to the first game on Thanksgiving. Bears Lions.
Interesting. I like your pick.
Um, because the Bears have gotta be, if the Dolphins are the most frustrating team in the AFC, the Bears are the most frustrating team in the
Gosh, don't
NFC.
get me started on another rant again, because I will go on another Matt Eberflus rant here. Colin Cowherd on FS1 said it on Monday, and he's right. I can't keep my eyes off the Bears. You gotta watch them. You gotta see how this team is gonna find a way to
To,
lose football games.
yes. And then on the other side, the, I think the Lions just forgot how to lose. So it's like you got one side that finds ways to lose games, and you got a team on the other side that's just, yep, we're 10-1. You, we're steamrolling our way through the season. It almost feels like Detroit is playing like they should have been in the Super Bowl last year. It feels like they're playing with a chip on their shoulder this season because
Dare
they,
I say, finish their story?
oh my lord, um because they know they let that game get away last year in San Francisco. I fe- it feels like to me Detroit thinks they lost that game rather than San Francisco won that game.
Oh, they definitely watched that game. I agree with that sentiment 100%. The only reason why I almost had that game on my list, the reason why I feel like there is a scenario where Chicago gets blown out, because I think Detroit remembers what happened last year on Thanksgiving. Remember, they were 7.5 point favorites. Green Bay was like 3-6 at that point, really struggling. I think it was week 12, so maybe they were 4-7, somewhere along those lines, and they had already beaten Green Bay in Lambeau bad on a Thursday night, and Jordan Love came in there, and that was the day the Green Bay Packers began their hot streak. They humiliated the Lions in Detroit. I think Detroit, knowing they have Green Bay next Thursday night in the Motor City, they will not overlook the Bears in this game. And if the Bears cannot figure out a way to stop the Sonic and Knuckles tandem of Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, it may be a long day for Matt Eberflus. And I'll say one more thing, Josh. I consider Thanksgiving, even though it's an afternoon game, to be a nationally televised game. There's going to be 30, 40 something million viewers watching this game. If the Bears get humiliated, and I mean spanked, please, for the love of God, fire Matt Eberflus on Black Friday. Make it a Black Friday for the Bears head coach.
I could see that. Um, by the way, I do understand why you put Steelers Bengals on your list because Cincinnati was almost able to come back and beat the Chargers, but it feels like the Bengals are already done. So, so
I
I
I put it on my list more because of the history of the rivalry of those two franchises. I think it's going to be an incredible down to the finish game. I think it has more blowout potential in the Chicago Detroit game than that game.
which I do understand your reasoning, but because of the intrigue of is Chicago going to find a way to lose or is Detroit going to blow them out? That's why I put it on my list. Kind
Yeah,
of like the Chargers Falcons game. I'm not entirely sure. Like,
like that game, the Charger Falcons and Arizona Minnesota sort of feels like you could put both those games in the same spot. Like, to
in
me,
what regard?
like, okay, so for Cardinals Vikings, for that situation for Minnesota, it's like to me the game matters for them because they're still fighting for maybe even the one seed and the division, but they don't have as much urgency as Arizona, who is just battling for a potential NFC West spot. Where the Chargers Falcons, to me, I know Tampa has gotten healthy. I know they're getting better. I think Atlanta's going to probably win that NFC South. For the Chargers, it's like, do you really want to lose two in a row coming off a short week? But you don't really need the game because you can still get in if you lose. So it's one of those where it's like these are four teams, two matchups, where it's like both of them to me, their season's not over, but it would take a hit if they lose.
So let me ask you this. Did you even consider Browns Broncos the
I
Monday night?
did. I
Okay.
did. There was probably like 7 or 8 on my list. And the only reason why I didn't put it on there is because the Browns have no chance of the playoffs.
I would agree with you. I mean, if they win this game, it would be their fourth win on
They'd
this.
have to win out. They'd
Yeah,
have to win out.
right. And I don't see that happening because you have Pittsburgh next week in Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Cincinnati, which that game got flexed out of Thursday Night Football. Congratulations to the Browns and Bengals for being the first ever game to be flexed out of Thursday Night Football. That game will now be played at 1 p.m. on Fox. Chargers Broncos got flexed into Thursday Night Football. And then they have to go to Baltimore in week 18. Or
Yeah.
no, I forgot. They have to play the Dolphins
The
here.
Dolphins week 17, then Baltimore week 18. Yeah, I'm sorry, Browns fans. It's not happening.
No. But think about this just on that note. Jameis Winston joins Baker Mayfield as the only Browns quarterbacks to beat both the Steelers and the Ravens in the same season.
That's funny.
I think. I could be wrong about that, but I think I saw that statistic.
That's incredible because there's like Jameis. Well, wait, no, Jameis didn't start against Baltimore, so
No, he did. He did.
wasn't that DTR?
No.
What? Wait, they lost to Baltimore.
No, they
Wait,
didn't.
no, wait.
Yeah, it's right
What?
here. Jameis Winston has defeated the Ravens and Steelers since becoming the Browns starter. He and Baker Mayfield are the only
You're
Browns.
right. DTR came in for Watson against Cincinnati. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I knew it at some point. That's my bad. That's totally on me. Josh is right.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's right here. Jameis Winston and Baker Mayfield back in 2019 are the only Browns quarterbacks to defeat Baltimore and Pittsburgh in a single season. I don't know if I should be excited about that or just be like, really? I don't know.
Speaking of rivalries, it is rivalry week in college football, of course, featuring the game, which I predict will not be a game by halftime. As Ohio State takes on Michigan, I do not think this game will be close. I think Ohio State will detach Michigan. I think the line is like 20 and a half. I'll take Ohio State. And you know what? I'm watching these college football games this weekend. I know the Iron Bowl's a thing this year. Who cares? Alabama's not in the college football playoff. They just lost to Oklahoma and Vanderbilt. Who cares? This is Josh, the least excited I've been about a college football rivalry weekend in a long time. Because I don't think it matters. Because all that matters is next week are those conference championship games.
The only game that really matters is that Texas A&M game because the winner of that game clinches a spot in the SEC championship against Georgia. But like Michigan, Ohio State's favored by 21. Washington, Oregon. I love that rivalry. I was so excited about that game last year. It was a top 5 matchup, had major playoff implications, all this and that. Oregon's favored by 19 and a half. Like South Carolina, Clemson, okay? It's a top 20 matchup. Okay, I guess. But like the Iron Bowl, Alabama has 3 losses. They're not going to the playoff. Auburn, you pulled off this great upset. Cool. Alabama's an 11.5 point favorite. What?
Yeah, and so again, like this is the weirdest college football season maybe we've ever seen. I said it a couple of weeks ago. There is not a great team. I think Ohio State, no matter what now, even if they lose to Oregon, if they lose to Michigan, which they will not do, and they lose to Oregon, then you'd have a different conversation. But I think Ohio State's in the college football playoff. We already know Oregon is in. My best guess would be again, barring a collapse, Texas is probably in. Georgia is in. I would think Penn State, even though they're not going to have, a conference championship game, I would guess they're in. Like,
Indiana, I guess, but
well, I don't know. They got their doors blown off by Ohio State.
yeah, even if Indiana gets in, they'll get blown out by whoever they play. I
Like,
think.
the Big 12 champion's going to be in. It's not going to be Colorado. Um, I don't think any of those teams can win the national championship. Like, I think right now it's a conversation between Ohio State, Oregon, Texas, and Georgia.
I would agree. And here's the crazy thing. The Big 12 champion is probably going to end up as the 12 seed, and Boise State is probably going to end up with the first round bye as non-power 4 school or whatever term they use.
Well, because the conference champions all get buys, right?
The top 4.
Oh, okay. So the top 4 conference champions all get buys.
So if Boise State is ranked higher than the Big 12 champion, Boise State would get the first.
That's insane that Boise State would get a bye. They couldn't hold their junk with any of the top 5 teams.
So I think no, Boise State kept it really close against Oregon earlier this season.
Yeah, but Oregon wasn't playing well at the start of the year. I don't think Oregon is even a great team. We talked about this one ever against Ohio State. My biggest takeaway from that Ohio State Oregon game in Eugene will be Ohio State will win the Big Ten championship game on a neutral field.
I'm hoping we get that rematch. All that needs to happen is Ohio State needs to beat Michigan. But if
I have no if Ohio State loses to Michigan, I will be with every Ohio State alumni in the country. I don't care. I think you fire Ryan Day on the spot. They have no excuse. Michigan is a shell of what they were a year ago.
Yeah. If by slim chance Michigan loses, or I'm sorry, Ohio State loses to Michigan, then Penn State and Indiana both come back into play. All Penn State would need to do is win their game, I believe, against Maryland, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I think Penn State, I think your nifty Lions can match up with Oregon.
Maybe, but I wouldn't trust James Franklin in a game against Oregon. No.
That's true. Obviously Dan Lanning against James Franklin, that'd be a mismatch in the coaching department. Listen, I think it's on the board. We get Ohio State, Oregon 3 times in 1 year.
It could happen. It very well could, yeah.
It's funny. I'm watching these college games this weekend, and I'm like, I was more excited for college football in September than I am now. Like, it just feels like the way these games were set up late in the year, the way the teams are this year, the way the 12-team playoff works, it's like, well, and that's why I've said I think it demotes the rivalry games a little bit.
Oh, I don't think so. Like
I'm not excited about Ohio State, Michigan. I could care less. I really could care less. I think Ohio State's going to beat them by 28.
Most likely, but Ohio State fans are still Xing out M's everywhere. Like, they still very much care about.
Those are fans. And the college football fan base, we talked about this a few weeks ago, is obviously the rowdiest in the country. I think Texas needs to win this weekend. Georgia, I don't know what to make of them. Every time I see Georgia play and I think they look good, they go out and they lose to Ole Miss.
Yeah, but then Ole Miss goes out and loses to Florida.
Yeah, so it's a weird year. There's going to be teams in the CFP that I don't think belong in the CFP. I'm very interested to see how this first round matchups will go because those are going to be games in the home team stadium.
Yeah. Like, imagine, like, if Indiana or Penn State have a home game and it's against an SEC team and they have to play in, like, 40 degrees and snow.
Yeah.
What are people going to say then? Oh, college football teams need to start playing in a dome.
All right. Well, Judge, you alluded to this at the top of the show. You gave me a little bit of a shrug. But let's talk about war games taking place this weekend up north in Canada. We have a women's war games match. We have a men's war games match. We have a World Heavyweight Championship rematch, a United States Championship, and an Intercontinental Championship on the line.
Yep. And this is my reaction.
I'm not shocked knowing how you are as a fan and knowing what interests you and what does not interest you. I think the main event is going to be an hour worth of cinema that I think we should all just sit and enjoy. And I don't think anybody knows what the hell is going to happen in this match. Even if we think we know, we don't know because that's been the bloodline situation the past 5 years. The reveal of Paul Heyman returning and CM Punk becoming the fifth man, I thought was chef's kiss. I thought that was one of the best SmackDown segments of the year. And I also like how, to me, it will play into the eventual CM Punk versus Seth Rollins, your guy match that we will get at WrestleMania 41. Because even though Seth Rollins did not want a team with his former Shield buddy, he will be upset that CM Punk is not beating up his arch rival.
Yep. I would have preferred if this match had stayed 4-on-4 and just been Bloodline against Bloodline. I didn't think there was a need for a fifth man, but whatever. I think it'll be a very good match. The story has been interesting at times. At other times, I'm just like, okay, whatever. Like LA Knight versus Shinsuke Nakamura. LA Knight's going to win that match. Whoop-de-freaking-do. Gunther versus Priest. They had Priest give Gunther the Razor's Edge last night on Raw, so Gunther's going to retain. I could see a scenario where they take the IC title off of Braun Breaker and give it to Sheamus because it's a triple threat.
And Sheamus has never won the title before, and it's his step to be a Grand Slam champion. And you have Sheamus maybe pin Ludwig Kaiser, and you give the title off Breaker. There's a lot of. I think that's gonna be a very fun match. Braun Breaker slowly becoming the most over superstars in the WWE. I think he's slowly turning face. Maybe that's how you get him to be a full-fledged babyface and losing the title. I don't know. And obviously, I think, Bayley, it's pretty clear it's going to become the fifth member of the Women's War Games match.
I already read the spoilers because they taped SmackDown.
They did.
I can tell you she is the fifth.
The interesting aspect of this is two things. Number one is who is going to be revealed as the attacker for Jade Cargill if they review it at Survivor Series. Is it going to be Naomi? Is it going to be Bianca? Is it going to be Bayley? And the other thing I have a question of, which I think would be a really interesting gimmick. What if, hear me out here, in the middle of the War Games match, Tiffy time takes place?
I mean, they teased that last year with Damian Priest before Randy Orton came out, so I could see it happening.
They did, but Rhea was obviously there with the briefcase. I'm talking about, what if Tiffany Stratton somehow opens the door or somehow communicates to the referee she wants to cash in mid-match on her teammate, and it's not Liv Morgan, it's Nia Jax.
Yeah. That would certainly be interesting, and I don't think it's something you can dismiss. It's interesting that they're putting Rhea right back into this spot, given that she just recently broke like her orbital bone or whatever it is. But I think that just makes her more of a badass.
Oh
And
my god. The pop she got last night on Raw, somebody in the internet a couple of days before had said she's the Stone Cold Steve Austin of the of this generation. And I heard that pop and I'm like, she might be. The pop she is getting is absolutely insane.
yeah, and they teased the match again between her and Bianca. I'd like to see that singles match at WrestleMania. That's just me personally. I think they're going to go back to Rhea versus Liv at WrestleMania, which
I told you at SummerSlam this feud's gonna go all the way to WrestleMania. And you told me you didn't think it was. I told you it is.
it the way they're doing it, it feels like it. I'm a little bit surprised that they've gone away from Priest versus Balor this quickly. I didn't think it would be a one and done type
Let me
situation.
throw this at you. What if the Judgment Day screw Priest again?
Maybe, but it seems like the Judgment Day are on the verge of breaking up.
I think they're teasing it a little. I don't think that's going to be the case yet. Um, I think as long as Rhea's still fighting Liv, Balor will still be fighting Priest in some sense.
Yeah. Um, I'll tell you what, I haven't really been paying a lot of attention to wrestling in general. Like I didn't watch AEW Full Gear or Wrestle Dream or All
I'm
Out.
shocked by that.
I mean, okay, with All Out, it was literally like a week or two after All In, so I didn't want to pay another $50. Um, with Wrestle Dream, I think I was working either a Cavs game or a Monsters game or something, and it was the same case with Full Gear, where I was working and the timing just didn't work out.
Didn't you always order the pay per view though and like watch it the next day? I swear you could. Maybe I
Yeah, yeah, I can, but eh, I, I it's
because
hard because all the pay per views are $50.
yeah,
So I don't know. I
I
know AEW is going to be moving to Max, so we'll see if they kind of go the WWE route where they they make it like premium live events, whatever. But yeah,
because I know for me, like War Game starts at 6 p.m. Eastern here on the East Coast. I will not be watching it till like after 9 because I'll be at a family event. I'll be able to get home by like 7:38. But unfortunately, on Peacock, I wish Peacock would do this thing where you can start from the beginning. You can catch up on a show late. You can't do that.
no. Um, and I wouldn't be able to watch Survivor Series anyway because I'll be at a high school reunion. But even if I didn't have that, I probably would watch the Texas A&M game instead.
See, I think that this War Games, men's War Games match, it's not just about the match itself, it's about the stories that are coming out of it. Will Paul Heyman screw CM Punk and Roman Reigns? Does he align himself with the new bloodline? Does Seth Rollins get involved? Does the final boss appear either during the match or after the match? What is our main event for the first Raw on Netflix? There are so many what ifs in wrestling that we have not had a lot of time to get into because of all the sports that are going on. But I promise you, in January, when the college football playoff is over, when the NFL is just in their playoff phase, when we get to the Royal Rumble, we are going to be discussing basically what ifs in wrestling. Um, this may be my favorite what if ever going into 2025. If you guys have not, go on Brain's World, listen to my wrestling interview that I did with Michael Reiner. I alluded to him a couple segments ago when we were talking about the Steelers. He's a big professional wrestling fan. He wants to be a wrestling writer eventually in his career. He thinks about wrestling more strategically than anybody I have ever met in my life. And we discussed John Cena's retirement. We discussed Survivor Series. This was before Bronson Reed and CM Punk were named the fifth members of each team. We discussed the Rumble. We discussed WrestleMania. All of these what if scenarios that I think is bigger than the matches itself at this point. To me, stories is what's driving this. The in-ring work is whatever. Like the War Games match, it takes 30 minutes to get into it. It's whatever. I'm intrigued by how this thing's gonna end.
Yeah. I'm of all the matches at War Games, I guess the one I would be most interested in is the triple threat for the Intercontinental
I was just about to
Championship.
say that. Knowing you and knowing your fandom as a wrestling fan, I knew that.
So, what made you think that? What about my fandom?
I just know that you are more of a guy that's more about the in ring work more than the storytelling. And I
It's
think that
interesting you say that because I'm loving this John Moxley Death Rider story over in AEW. And I know what kind of in ring worker John Moxley is. Didn't get to watch the match at Full Gear, but I've seen highlights and it was unbelievable from what
yeah, I think you can get into the story if you know the guy's a good in ring worker. I think you put it like that in a good way. Where I'm more the I don't care if you're gonna have a good match. The story drives the match for me. Which
I,
again, it's why professional wrestling is so subjective.
yes. And like I'll tell you this. I was more interested in last year's men's Survivor Series match with the Team Cody against the Judgment Day. There was just something about that story and how they told it that I'm like, okay, I'm really into this. Like,
See, I was more interested about would a certain second city saint show up to Chicago, Illinois, which was done in my opinion perfectly. I know we disagree on that. How funny is it? Just on the topic of him, he's wrestled what 4 matches. The War Games will be his 4th match since he's come back to WWE, and it feels like he's been back for 5 years.
I mean, people are trying to erase his time in AEW. You kind of can't.
I mean, he's kind of trying to do it himself.
He is, and I'm sorry, but you're never going to be able to erase your time in AEW. You're just not. Um, fan, I don't think AEW fans are ever going to forget it in a positive or negative way. So you kind of can't.
I think you could if the backstage incidents didn't happen.
I agree with you. Although I loved the feud between him and MJF while he was in.
Oh yeah, that was. I mean, I think that's right up there to me with his Drew feud, which I think you can make a case him and Drew are the feud of the year in professional wrestling.
I would agree with you on that. I would put Swerve Hangman up there, but it's hard to argue with Punk Drew.
Well, again, I think wrestling days are all subjective. I can't wait for Survivor Series. I don't think it's going to be the greatest show in the world per se until the main event, which again, I don't even think the match is going to be spectacular. I actually thought I was kind of, I got the direction where they're going with 5-on-5. I agree with you. I thought it could have been 4-on-4. I actually thought if they were going to do 5-on-5, and I told you this before, I thought it was going to be Kevin Owens joining the heel side, solo side, and Cody Rhodes.
Okay, we gotta talk about that.
The OG one side.
They had that promo that Kevin Owens cut on
the promo of his career.
That was
all true.
That 100%, and that match was made official for Saturday night's main event. I know the Randy Orton feud is right there for Cody Rhodes. They've been teasing it. I don't give a damn. Kevin Owens needs to take that title from Cody Rhodes at Saturday night's main event.
I'll tell you what, if they do it, that'd be a spot to do it. I still don't think it's going to happen because, Josh, I think on the first Raw on Netflix, Cody Rhodes is going to lose his undisputed WWE Championship.
To Roman Reigns?
No, to the final boss.
You don't think they're gonna save that match? Ugh.
I think Cody and Rock, I think The Rock will win the title from Cody on Netflix. They will have the rematch at the Rumble. Cody will probably win, and I think Roman Reigns will win the Rumble. If I'm sitting here today right now, I think your WrestleMania 41 main event is a triple threat between Cody, Rock, and Roman night 2.
I I see it, but I I
The
think
other scenario is Rock retains the title, Randy RKO's Cody, and you have Randy and Cody have a non-title match at Mania,
I
and
see,
Rock and Roman.
I see it, but what if they do this? Kevin Owens wins the WWE Championship from Cody, and then at Mania you do triple threat match: Kevin Owens, Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes. I
You,
think
I don't think Cody's walking into the first Raw on Netflix without the title.
I think he is. I think Kevin Owens beats him.
I could be wrong. I hope you're right. Again, this is part of the what ifs in wrestling, which is so cool. I want to give you one more what if before we get out of here. Next Monday on Raw, the New Day's 10-year celebration. Does Xavier Woods turn heel? Do we see the end of the New Day? Or does Big E come back and save the group?
I think New Day splits up.
Okay. I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm sitting on pins and needles because I don't know. And I don't know what I want. So that's that. All right, we're out of here. I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you for tuning in tonight to a lively discussion championship ranks. Second time I feel like me and Josh have done a show, back-to-back great shows. Jalen was great filling in last week for me, as always. We'll be back soon. Until then, enjoy your holiday weekend. Subscribe to us on all the socials. Josh, you got anything else to add?
Nope.
All right, we'll see you guys next time on Championship Rings.